Alright, here we go into map 6, and things get significantly spookier here, as you're about to see. And the beginning kind of suggests that with this very noticeable light pattern shining brightly into the entrance area, suggesting that you're going to be dealing with something a little bit more intimidating in this map, and that is definitely the case. This map actually has the most amount of monsters of any map in Doom, any episode. And I think maybe a lot of that just has to do with the fact that they're low-level enemies, but that's still pretty notable. But this has the same sort of features of these walkways that are connecting, open walkways that are connecting different zones. But you see there the kind of weird brutalist slab that separates the floor from the ceiling, and it definitely makes it feel different from previous areas where you see the sky, just making that ceiling the distance thicker. It kind of makes you feel like you're in some sort of concrete bunker or something, and it definitely gives a unique theme to that particular area, which we'll see a little bit more later. But first, I want to go to one of the best areas, which is the first key area right from the start. And there's this barrel pattern that I'm going to screw up, but you see that it's the obligatory computer zones have sort of fallen into something a little bit more big and epic, and the area starts out very empty, but as you're about to see, when you pick up the red key, things get a lot more scary, and that happens a lot in this map. There are a lot of gotcha moments, and it's kind of something that you're ready to deal with by this time in the episode if you've made it this far. So I think John Romero didn't feel particularly bad about trying a lot of different design tricks in this and the next maps. So as a consequence, I think they're kind of the most creative. And also, this one feels like you're really getting into the guts. This one and the next one kind of feel like companion pieces, but this one feels like you're really starting to get into the guts of this like machine. You're starting to see the heart of this computer that you've seen glimpses of in a bunch of different levels. But yeah, that area is just kind of calling you from the start to come and pick up the key, and I just always liked how that was set up. And actually, this is probably my favorite map of the episode, and maybe one of my favorite Doom maps. It's really grown on me over time, and you'll see more why. But yeah, there's once again, there's a lot of interconnectedness in this map, and this one's a bit more mazy, and the way things interconnect are a bit more confusing, and they'll get even more confusing in the next map. But this one has a consistent kind of theme and atmosphere more than the map after it, which makes me, and the ending is just really memorable, so that's part of what makes me remember this one and make it stick out to me even after 20 years. But yeah, so a lot of these different areas in the map are separated from these open toxic waste walkways, sort of like the labs in map 6. Actually, I'd say this one corresponds better with the image that's used on the the intermission screen for map 6, or for map 5, but whatever. So yeah, I can't go over here yet, but this is the area where I think the yellow, no, not the yellow key, the blue key is maybe. maybe it's where the yellow key is. I can't remember exactly, but we'll see in a bit. And there's a lot of different things happening here. Yeah, this is a central hub computer room, and you can actually beat this map out of order in a couple of different ways, which makes it more interesting to me. And, you know, the way that a lot of these maps have all these really distinctive landmarks, and yet are still open and still kind of like things you could play on multiplayer is pretty brilliant. But yeah, this is one of my favorite areas too. I think this is where you pick up the blue key, the sort of brutalist slabs. It makes me think of this library. I went to a school called Oberlin College in Ohio, and we had this library that was very concrete and brutalist, and yeah, that sort of shape is something that is very unique to Doom, and very much using the engine to create a different sort of architectural atmosphere. But yeah, here's another little gotcha moment, and I like that this key is suspended over this pit of toxic waste that you don't really need to go into, but it's obviously inviting you. And there's a few different ways you can go. I think they all lead to secrets, but I thankfully found the one with the suit. And it's which is funny, I feel like a lot of these levels don't actually have the suits very often, but yeah. So this sends you to a secret back behind where you enter, which I think there's a secret like this in the next map. I might have missed it, who knows. But yeah, and then this sends you up to yet another soul sphere. But yeah, I like how so many of the secrets connect back up to previous areas. Even if it's like, I don't know, because it's a thing. I'm not picking up the light amplification goggles, by the way, because that totally ruins the beautiful lighting that's in this level. But yeah, I think in modern, AAA games, they're very afraid of breaking sequence and breaking these sort of setup events, and it just makes it a lot less interesting because you can't approach it from these different angles. And that's the thing about Doom, is that there's still these set pieces and you still get a definite experience from them without you needing to experience them in a very linear manner. And that's less so in some of the maps in episode 2 and etc. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this door, no, maybe that's not true. There are places in this map where the door closes behind you and you can't get back out. I think that's at the end, but this is the maze area, which is always fun. Was my least favorite area as a kid because I could not find my way through it. But once again, this has a very consistent theming to it. The central square rooms with the walkways on them that match up with the walkways earlier in the level, but this time you're sort of indoors and there are these bright lights shining on you like you're under a operating room or something. I don't know, but it's kind of sinister in a subtle way because it does make you feel more claustrophobic, I think, than if it was just a normal ceiling texture. But yeah, this area is actually not that big, but it's big by the standards of this game. So I found the switch here, and I think I hit it, but maybe I didn't. I'm just going around more in the maze and exploring because I'm not afraid like I used to be. I used to be terrified of this level when I was little, and I think part of that is the layout is very sinister in this one and the next one, but this one in particular. And I neglected to realize that's the secret there that opens up, but it opens up later. I neglected to realize that you have to go back to the dark green area that was blocked off before. But yeah, a little maze. And it doesn't use like height variation or very much, but it doesn't need to because that's part of the theming of this level. This level, just in general, is very consistently themed, which is why I would which is why it's one of my favorite. And it does send you, there's a progression to it as well. Okay, so here you're in the next area, and this just leads you up in this little winding path up to the key. And there are a lot of places, and the next map goes to an extreme with this of having you look back over where you were in the areas that you get the key. And I really like that. And again, is one of the things that John Romero consistently does, and then does again and puts a twist on it when he does it again. Just like using the walkway idea, but using it in a different way. So there are a lot of, in general, like I've said before, there are a lot of ideas in this episode that get reused, but there's always a twist put on them. Yeah, and here's one of the secrets. And I think I screwed up and didn't get one of them, and I'm not sure which secret that I didn't get on this run through, but oh well. This is the one where you can get stuck, or at least I didn't know how to get back out. It's one of my favorite secrets now. There are all these dudes, and I have all the keys by this point, but I think you can... No, I don't think you can get to this area with... There's an area that you can get to without the yellow key, but through a secret, but that means that you can't get back to the other part of the level. You're just essentially stuck. Yeah, there the doorway closes on that H.R. Geiger tech thing, and there's no way back out. And when I was young, I didn't know that you could just try that platform and get back through. But this is one side of like a two-sided castle structure that's actually later in the map. And the way that this just connects up to something that is actually completely different, an area that serves a completely different function, is really interesting. You kind of are cutting through the sequence, but it just makes the world feel like it's alive. Yeah, and there's the other side, which I don't know if you can get to. Maybe you can. I don't know what the secret that I didn't find was. But yeah, this is the last area right before you go to the final exit, which is up through that door, as far as I know. And this sends you back to that computer area that was earlier, and that you would presumably be entering through if you didn't go through that secret. So it's kind of a shortcut, but it also does it in a way that you wouldn't expect. And if you didn't go back there, you wouldn't know that these things all connect up to each other. And yeah, here's another three-pronged hallway. There's one just right behind us too, where the staircase is in the center. Again, like in level 5 or level 3 or 4. But this leads to an entirely different sort of exit, which you're about to see. Actually, no, that sends you to a secret that's suspended above this exit room. But yeah, this exit room is my favorite room in the map. Well, a tie between this and that monolith room. But yeah, you come in, and once you come in to this computer area and hit the switch, you're stuck here, and there are shit tons of enemies, so I just sit here and fire at them for forever. I do have a chainsaw, but I neglect to use it. And yeah, now you've really descended into the madness of this game, and you're starting to see just the heart of darkness at the center. I'd say this is even more Heart of Darkness in some ways than map number 8, which is really supposed to be where you get that experience, because I don't know, there's something sinister that's more subtle about these tech-based style maps, especially when they use that H.R. Geiger texture and when they have interesting lighting and layouts. There's something scarier about it. Yeah, so I'm stuck in here right now. The doors will open eventually, but then I won't go through them because I forget. But yeah, and the exit area. Yeah, so there you go. You open back up, and of course I'll hit the switch again and screw myself up again. But Yeah, there's something very strange and otherworldly and intimidating about the kind of H.R. Geiger computer textures, in a way that really the hell textures don't scare me. They feel kind of cartoony. And here, yeah, you've descended into the heart, and the map ends exactly where it should end, which is wonderful. One of my favorite things is having maps that, start and begin where they should end, and there's no reason why you would. This is just the perfect ending for the map, because it sends you into the computer zone or computer base. I forget the name of the next map. So it's directly kind of referencing the theme and, really making it known to the player that they're just descending further into this realm of madness where the pseudo-realistic structures are starting to break down and it becomes something else entirely, which is really what a lot of the rest of the game is, and arguably not always good at doing. But yeah, so that is the end of map 6, and I was super excited to play through this map, and I still recommend highly playing through it again, this as well as the next map, in order just to study the design and the way that the textures and stuff are used, and the interconnectedness and all of that is really good. So recommend it. Oh, and I am running low on battery, so I use this battery powered mixer, don't ask. But yeah, I missed a secret there. But if I run out of battery, I'll just do more of this later. So yeah, this start is very similar to map 3. You start at an off angle, like you seem to in a lot of John Romero's maps for whatever reason. But once you open it up, it does not look anything like map 3. It's just a very confusing clusterfuck, and you were about to see that. So this level is, I've heard described as a multi-dimensional horror. There are, which I think might be a slight exaggeration, but there are so many different winding paths and the themes of interconnectedness that you see in a lot of the secrets in the other maps, and you see, in maps that are ostensibly linear but connecting back up to where you were. Here, it's not really linear at all. I mean, you have to go in these in a different order, but it's just opening you up to all the connections right away. And that's what really makes this different. Also, the openness puts you in a lot of danger in a lot of areas, like through that yellow door. You'll see more of it. And there's that lone candelabra thing that it's the only one in this map, and I remember somebody made a thread entirely about that on Doom World, because they were just like, they wanted to know what the mystery of that candelabra was. It was just a mystery to them why it exists in this map and why it's sitting there on that lonely window. But yeah, here's the first key. And I was actually playing this not really knowing this map very well. I skipped a lot when I was a kid. Actually, I should talk about that. When I was a kid, I played this game with the invincibility cheats on. Oh yeah, here's a toxic room that's similar to parts of map 5. But anyway, I played this game with the invincibility on, and it was really more of an exploration kind of tourism kind of game for me than it was an action game, because it was way too scary for me. Like even with all the cheats on, it was still too scary. So I think part of the way that I see this game now is defined by that. And I really enjoy playing the game, and the challenge of it now and how well balanced it is. But for me, what got me into it was really the environments and the way that they're built. And I think that's something that people don't really think about enough when they think about Doom, because they think about Doom as the lineage of like brutal, hyper masculine first person shooters, and the game really only embodies that in some ways, and that was just further and further emphasized the further you got into this, the more these games became popular. But yeah, this area, by the way, these guys can see you from the little cracks in the ceiling, and then there are other guys shooting at you all the way from the exit area, which is in a far window over there. So all the interconnected spaces are kind of coming together and making this a very disorienting experience. Yeah, but you can go up here. There's actually nothing in particular up here. But yeah, even so, Doom and Duke Nukem 3D, those were two of my favorite games, but I can't excuse at any level the grossness of some of the stuff in Duke Nukem 3D, and the whole hyper-masculine shooter thing is just not something that ever appealed to me in any way, shape, or form, and was not why I liked the games. And so I think really the unsung parts of these games are the design of the environments and the clever things that are done, and the fact that these are just sort of kinds of experiences that didn't exist before. And there's a lot of exploration games like Myst or something where you move more slowly and they're more puzzle based, but there's something to be said about a kind of game like this where you move much more quickly and your interaction with the environment is much more immediate, because it's just like your relationship with the environment, it feels a lot more real and tactile instead of just like looking at slides. And I'm not saying that looking at still images is necessarily a bad thing. There are different ways to design a game, but I think Doom needs to be understood and defended for that. But yeah, here's an open walkway into this toxic, that goes through this toxic waste pit, and there's this column in here that serves no purpose other than to get you to several different secrets, so it's actually very useful, and it's a clever use of the running, the fact that you can't jump in this game, but you can run to get to different areas if you're at a higher enough platform. And some Doom fan-made WODs often use this idea in order to complete like much more complicated puzzles, and it can be kind of hard to fraught with a lot of annoyance a lot of the time, but I guess is no less annoying in some ways than 3D jumping puzzles, because at least you're not jumping this time. Although the movement definitely is pretty slidey, so it's usually not a thing that's required in these maps because of that. Because this is definitely designed for running and not for navigating tight areas where you can fall. I think a thing that you notice in general with this episode is how self-contained everything is, and how much this level in particular you see references to levels that came before it, like all the multiple paths and everything have sort of come to a head, and it's just become this multi-dimensional nightmare. But there are also all these areas that seem to reference areas in previous maps, like this toxic waste sort of corner of the map looks like a part of map 5, and some of the areas around the exit that you saw from afar is reminiscent of the first level, and especially the end area of the second level in particular. Some of the multiple inner winding paths and stuff, maybe reminiscent of the third level, and some also, of the way that the gameplay is ramped up and stuff is very reminiscent of map 6. Here you look from above at a key below you, which is an inversion of something from the previous map, where you looked at the prison bars above where the key was. So it's again using a very small set of variables in map design and repeating them, but inverting them or changing them just so that they're different. And that's something that John Romero put so much attention to, that it really, makes the feel of this episode kind of diverse and have each level have its own sort of character, despite the fact that they're very similar in a lot of ways in theming and design. But yeah, the stuff that was built over, was built over in the previous levels, all the computer crap stuff, is what you're finally at the center of here in this computer station, if it can be called that. I mean, the names are kind of goofy in themselves, because they don't really describe anything, but at least maybe give you an idea of what the character of this map might be. But yeah, here I'm going the other side of the secret. That's right. I somehow missed a secret here, and I don't know what it was, but whatever. Yeah, I am fond of that column and as a method for getting secrets. But yeah, so you see, I picked up the red key, I think it was. It has gradually unleashed some enemies across the level, which is a thing that didn't get introduced until map 6, because the episode kind of built up to that. And now I'm returning to the door immediately to your right from the beginning, which is the last real door that you need to go in before the exit, and it's a very anticlimactic last key, which I like because, you've already spent so much time wandering through this maze, you don't really need it. By the way, I wanted to comment on how this stairway serves no purpose. You go up the stairs and then you go right back down, but it doesn't really seem to matter, and I don't know why. It's just another one of the things of the character of the design of this game. It doesn't make any logical sense, but it sort of feels right. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to praise this design style too much, if only because I feel like it's been done so many times before, and so many people in the Doom community have looked back over these maps and just sort of in this kind of wondered awe, and then kind of trashed the rest of them. Because I think when you enlarge the resolution and you look at this from modern source ports, there's still a kind of magic here in the shape of the levels. It's very unique, and it seems alien because of this strict insistence on all these design rules that really help provide this with a character, and also help introduce you to the idea of these spaces. But whereas later episodes, the layout isn't as unique, or doesn't translate as well when you up the resolution, because it's a lot more flat and a lot more reliant on just the feel of the textures and establishing atmosphere that way, and kind of a shock value kind of thing. Although sometimes it has more to it than that, but there's a kind of aesthetic quality to this that isn't there with later stuff because it doesn't have that consistency of feel or atmosphere. And also I think this does introduce you to all these variables in the game, and then this kind of thing isn't really explored anymore after. There's no consistent, like episode 2 is kind of consistent, but still kind of falls flat of having this a real notable atmosphere in most places. And 3 is just all over the place, and then Doom 2 is again really all over the place. So you never really return to this kind of style. It just kind of exists in this episode, and that's maybe why people are so fond of it. But yeah, I don't want to... I'm looking up The Last Secret, which I didn't... somehow missed a secret here, and I don't know which one it was because I thought I got all those secrets. But yeah, I like how most of the secrets in this map and the previous map are intuitively obvious. There's only 4, and I think you can get to like 2 or 3 of them just from that rising column, which you can see in the center of the map, and like, you know, walking around and seeing all the windows that peek into that room. You can see the secrets that extend out of that, so it's enough to give you a clear indication that that's what you're supposed to do, which is nice. It's really nice to have all these things interconnected so that you can see how they function, kind of like seeing the guts of the system, seeing the guts of the architecture in a way that you don't get to when it's all walled off and, you know, meant to separate these areas from each other. That's another thing that I guess makes this episode unique, is that it doesn't try to hide the guts. Like, all areas that you can see, you can go to. It doesn't separate them out. And I think that's something that a lot of people are really afraid to do in design, because they have these ideas in their mind for set pieces. I mean, I also think it has to do with like scripting and all kinds of other complicated stuff that exist in modern games, but still, it's a really honorable thing to not be so drinking the Kool-Aid of your map that you're not afraid to show its guts and kind of let the player run around in it and mess up the order that you might want them to go in it. Allow that sort of space to be explored in a way that you might not anticipate. And it's not like an open world game. It's not an open world setup. There's still, you know, it's still linear in a lot of senses, but the way that you're exploring it is different from just having it be broken off into set pieces. So yeah, you've finished the computer station, and now you're sort of at this existential epilogue where you've reached the end of these man-made structures, and you've come to this anomaly. And I think this was a bigger part of the original story, but I don't really know. And so you're going to see me fuck up really badly here. I'm going to die 2 times in a row, and then I'm just going to cheat. Because as it turns out, this area is actually pretty difficult. You know, in modern WADs, there'll be tons and tons and tons of enemies, but they'll also give you tons and tons of ammo, and you have the double-barreled shotgun, which is just so amazingly useful. Was an incredibly large contribution to Doom 2 because it makes things so much faster. But yeah, you don't have that here, and I don't even think you have the plasma rifle or the BFG yet in this episode. But yeah, the scary red, and the fact that the ceiling is nukage and the floor is this like weird red texture. But yeah, you can see I get trapped here. There is no way for me to get out. I am fucked. So it is not actually a very easy boss battle. And the funny thing is just that it's the Barons from Hell were seen as a boss enemy, but they're such a fairly common enemy in any Doom mods that you play now. They're still awfully strong, but it's weird to think of this as a boss like setup for someone who's played tons and tons of Doom mods over the years. But it does manage to work. But yeah, so you come up to this pentagram structure where it's the gateway into hell, supposedly. It's this kind of natural anomaly, and that's where the episode cuts off. That's where it ends, at this moment where you beat those monsters, and then you go through the portal, and instead of saying you win the game, you just go into a room with tons of enemies and you die, and there's no way to survive that. I used to try to keep typing in the invincibility cheat to see how long I would survive it, but there's no way to survive it, and you can't kill all the enemies either, because as it turns out, the floor is the damaging floor texture. But and then there's a thing that's basically telling you to buy the full game, and then that's the end. But I don't know, it's this given the strong atmosphere of the first 7 maps, for the most part, it really does evoke a strong sensation. It does feel like there's a story and an arc to what you've explored, even though the line about Doom is that it's just a game about killing things, and that you're playing as Doom Guy, and that's all that you need to know. You're just no plot, just kill things. But there's a definite story just being told in the way that the design arcs, and it's impossible, I believe, to not have the level design reflect some kind of narrative or some kind of story. It's always going to be there in whatever decisions that you make as a designer, so you might as well embrace that. And sometimes when you look at the John Romero maps, the instinct is to break them down into these mechanical bits and pieces, because that's what he did, that's how he approached them. But really, those are just techniques in order to evoke a mood in the end, and they're interesting to look at when you're talking about how they were designed, but they don't necessarily tell you what the spaces mean or what they are, because that might not have even been obvious to John Romero or anyone else who was working on the game. And yet it's there somewhere, and the experience is very real and tangible, so it can't be minimized or denied. But yeah, so when the ceiling raises down and you kill the guys, and you're in this area outside of the star, you see it's not on the auto map, which is suggesting that this area is beyond your scope of vision. You don't know what it is. It's kind of a fourth wall thing. And that's what I like about the ending of this episode. It's kind of a cheap, buy more episodes thing, but it's also a little bit of a fourth wall statement about video games, if you want to be slightly grandiose about it, which maybe I'm being generous. But the idea of that you've achieved, the idea that you're supposed to be rewarded for getting to the end with this, really obvious and unmistakably positive thing that says, yeah, you beat the game, here's whatever, everyone likes you now. Instead, just ending the game saying that, you've only gone into this hell zone, and it's only confused you further, and it's only added this element of mystery to the story, and you still don't really know what the experience was about, but it just adds to the alienation. So I don't know, for a consumer game product from 1993, it's kind of cool that they chose to do it an ending like that, and it adds on top of all the things that were done in the first episode to establish this really unique mood. But yeah, I don't want to trash the other episodes because I think, or the levels in Doom 2, because I think a lot of the stuff is very worthwhile, and I think it's important to challenge the conventional wisdom that puts this episode on a pedestal and says that it's ultimately superior, because whatever you design, the design should ultimately be there to evoke a story or a feeling, and there are so many different ways to do that. And yes, this episode did take advantage of the geometry and the functions of the Doom engine, but that isn't the end-all be-all and shouldn't be considered that. But yes, we can also appreciate the things that it did achieve and did do. So anyway, I'll write an article about this and you can read more later. I think more than anything, I just want to argue that the comic booky, action-y feeling of this game can actually be very deep and have all kinds of detail and richness to the experience, despite the fact that it's kind of an action game. And it needs to be understood as that and looked at as that. But just because it's that doesn't mean that you can't appreciate the amount of detail and the amount of things that make up this experience, because there's quite a bit, and you'll miss that if you dismiss it.